Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome to another sewing vlog. So the start of this week's vlog was actually filmed a few days ago, as in last week, but since it is the very beginning of the Hussif fancy dress costume that I am making for hashtag historical Halloween 2020, I decided I would go ahead and squidge it over to this week's vlog instead, since I got basically nothing done last week, and now I'm actually working on the Hussif. So today is Monday, Labor Day in the United States, and I will come back to you with footage from today, but first I'm going to show you what I worked on with the Hussif project last week. I realized that I never crossed off the projects that I finished last week, those skirts. So I know that I really like crossing things off a to-do list, so hopefully you like watching things be crossed off a to-do list, because that's what we're gonna do right now. We're gonna cross those things off my to-do list and maybe change some other things around, because I think it's time to start on another project. All right, so let's start with, I never even put those skirts in current projects. That's really funny. But we do have the bunny skirt done. And we have the plaid skirt done. It's really hard to erase with a big eraser when you have like a bazillion lines in there. There we go. Next bit is that I have edited the Disney Bounding Deep Dive video. Hopefully you've seen that by now. And nope, haven't done those. And oh, and I filmed and edited this, and I'm not doing that second video, so. And oh, and I filmed that too. That actually already came out. Wow, I haven't done this board in a long time. But I do have a lot more to be edited. So I've got the Elsa vlogs, I've got a Heat Fix Rhinestones video that's coming out. I need to edit 2 examining videos. One is going to be a teen's dress. And one is going to be a 1900s stripy bodice. And filming soon, I'm going to be having a video coming to you this week, I guess, yeah, this week, that is going to be all about fancy dress. AKA the video that was released on this most recent Friday. Go check it out, the link is in the description if you haven't already seen it. And the funny thing is, that is actually a perfect transition into the next topic. Because the next topic is that the project that I have decided to start this week is going to be the Hussif dress. So I'm going to put off that yellow circle skirt for a bit longer because I'm really excited about Halloween. It's September 2nd, it's spooky season, hence my spooky outfit. And so I want to start working on my Halloween costume. So I found some fabric in my stash that I think is going to work, which is great. And I'm going to show you kind of what patterns that I'm thinking about as well. So this is the fabric. This is a sort of a periwinkle blue twill, cotton twill, with just a little sheen to it as well, which is kind of fun. But it's kind of a lightweight twill. And so I was thinking that it would be just fine for a dress, especially since I am going to be embroidering on this dress. I want it to be a slightly firmer fabric. And I really wanted this to be blue, and I will show you why in a second. So that's why I went with this fabric, especially because I couldn't find blue cotton at Joann's. All right, so as a reminder, this is the Hussif. And we have just kind of a really basic dress. It's going to be gathered in to the waist, and it's going to close up the front with, I'm not sure yet, either I'll make some of these buttons functional or maybe hooks and eyes or something. And it might, because this is a teen's dress and they really liked those, it might then have a kind of a dog leg closure underneath where this measuring tape hangs down. So that might be what happens there. And then it does have a collar. So the collar is something that I still have to figure out. I have to go look through my patterns to see where I can find that collar, because it kind of looks like a sailor collar, but then it's not, because this is the back of the dress over here. So one of the things that I'm still trying to figure out as far as embellishments go is I have no idea what is going on with this sleeve. They almost look like they're supposed to be giant hooks and bars, but I don't know. But one of the ideas that I had was I came across this antique hussif, which is in French. So if you can translate this French, let me know what it says, but I can hardly read the cursive, let alone translate the French. But it's a little pattern instruction for a little hussif that I believe says, "A surprise for grandmother," because that much French I know. But what I really like about this is A, I really like the ribbon embroidery, and B, I love the way that they have done the finishing on the edge with the blanket stitch. And so I noticed that on her sleeves, she has kind of a blanket stitch thing going on here. So I think I'm going to do a blanket stitch finish for the sleeves and maybe do these as ribbon embroidery, because I can't figure out what that is otherwise. But it's time to start the dress. So I'm looking at a few different patterns. This one is honestly pretty similar, but I would drop the neckline down, shorten the sleeves, and narrow and shorten the skirt. This one, I think the skirt is going to be the most dissimilar thing, but the bodice itself looks pretty similar. So I'm definitely thinking about this pattern. This is bodice 6229 as a good base. I'm also looking at some of the other teens patterns that I have just to see if they might be a decent base as well. This one I think is not really right. I do like the lower neckline on this, and it does gather into the waist, and it has a sleeve that might be a little closer, but in the base dress, not the overlay. But this skirt is actually huge, and I'm not really sure why. These guys, though, have skirts that are a little narrower, and so I think might be a decent thing to at least compare to this pattern and just see just how much slimmer these skirts are, and if I can maybe use them and just shorten one of these skirts up. This one also has a kind of a lower neckline that gathers in, and if you take off this weird frilly elbow thing, it also has a sleeve that I think could be a decent base sleeve. So this one's definitely a good contender, but it doesn't close up the front. It, I think, zips up the back. So that's why I'm really thinking, one of the reasons that I'm thinking about combining these guys. And this one was really just there because I pulled out all of my teens patterns, but I don't think I'm gonna really be able to use anything from this pattern besides maybe just to see how slim the skirt is. So that is where I'm at currently with the Hussif costume, fancy dress costume. So I'm excited. I am gonna start cutting out pattern pieces, I think, which is, I don't know, I always get excited cutting out pattern pieces because it's like new project. But yeah, that is my next thing. I will check back in with you when I have done any sewing progress on anything. And now that we've talked about last week's bit, let's go ahead and look at what I've done so far today. So what I did was I altered that pattern, which was bodice 6229, and I am really not doing much alteration to the bodice. I am lengthening it because it looks really, really freaking short. Like, most bodices are short on me, but this one required, I think, 2 1/4 inches added to the fronts and sides, and nothing, no, 1/2 inch added to the center back, so tapering it out. And I do have a shorter back, I think, probably because I'm a little bit sway backed, but 2 1/4 inches seems like a lot to have to add to this. And I'm kind of being careful with it because with the last teen's dress, I originally tried to add length between the bottom of the armscye and the top of the shoulder, and then also half of the length between the bottom of the armscye and the hem, and it made the armscye way too long. So what I've just done this time is I've just added all of the length from beneath the armscye down to the hem. So there's 2 1/4 inches being added here. And I've also changed the neckline around. Since this is supposed to be a high collar neckline, I am changing it to match the Hussif dress. So it's kind of more of a slopey V and a little bit lower in the back as well. So once I did that, I cut out my mock-up. I have now sewn together my mock-up, and really all that is sewing the shoulder seams, the side seams, and then running gathering stitches basically along the entire bottom of this bodice. And now I'm going to go try it on. All right, so I have on the mock-up. The length looks pretty darn good in the front, but I'm actually wondering if it's even still way too long in the back. It's coming all the way down here, which I feel like it should be about right here. So in fact, I'm going to mark that. So it'll be there. And then the other thing is that I think the back as a whole is actually just too big. I mean, I have the gathering stitches in down at the hem, but the back is like too big all the way up. So I need to take out, I think, at least an inch out of the center back all the way down. And then the other fit issue that I'm having is that the armholes are like super gappy over here to the point where I have actually now put darts in. The thing is that I don't know that I want darts because I don't know that they did darts in this era at all. So I think I'm going to do a little research into stuff. I really don't want to have to mess with the whole, like, when you have to rotate the pattern to rotate the darts out. That's just more work than I want to do. And that would also mean that I would have to cut a whole other mock-up for the front pieces. And I'm lazy and I kind of don't want to do that, considering this is like, it is 19 teens, but it's a Halloween costume. It's a fancy dress costume. So I might not do that. I might just dart these. But otherwise, the fit looks good in the front. I like the amount of gathering that it has in here. And honestly, the amount of gathering that it has in the back is pretty much what I want. Also, again, it's just too gappy farther up in the back. And I'm kind of wondering if taking out that excess inch plus that's in the center back might even help with the length problem. So that is the next thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and take out the excess in the center back and regather the back, see if that changes the length. If not, I'm going to cut off some of the length of the back. That said, it is 9:55. I should be going to bed in like 5 minutes, so I will probably work on more of this tomorrow instead of today. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with the progress that I've made even just today. So I think that this Hussif dress is gonna come along pretty quickly, at least until it gets to the embellishment stage, which is really where this dress gets complicated. One more quick pop in for the night. I did go ahead and I took the excess out of the back. I actually took a total of 2.5 inches just straight all the way down out of the back. So it was 1.25 inches on each side. I'm still not really sure what to do about these darts. I looked in Patterns of Fashion at the 3 19 teens era dresses that were in there, and none of them showed darts, but also none of them showed a bodice pattern remotely like this. So I'm not positive. I did also mark how much too long it is both at the sides and then also in the center back. So I'm just going to cut off that excess as I go around and cut the actual pattern. But I think I'm going to spend overnight / tomorrow until I come back here in the afternoon to go work on this. I think I'm going to spend that time thinking about the dart situation, because I really don't think that I want darts, but again, I'm not sure how to fix that. I have to research the whole like pivoty thing. I know there's a thing with it, and I've done it before, but it's been a long time. So anyway, other than that, I am quite pleased with it. Actually closing up the excess in the back also helped the neckline, I think, be a little bit better. So I'm not sure. I think I want it to be actually a lot lower than this. So I guess I should probably tweak the neckline on this mock-up before I go into potential mock-up number 2, just because, as you can see from the sketch, the neckline is pretty significantly lower. I'm not really sure what to do about that collar, by the way, but yeah, because it's like almost like a fichu, but I think it's a collar. So maybe it's just that I need to kind of drape a fichu and attach it in as a collar, I think. we'll see. There will be some experimenting going on there, but I think that's going to be more sort of the trimming phase of everything. But otherwise, I'm pleased with the progress tonight, and I'm going to figure out what to do about those darts by tomorrow. So I will see you tomorrow. All right, so I have made a half of another mock-up, which is to say I recut this piece, but not this piece. It was giving me a whole lot of trouble trying to figure out how to get the gapiness away from the arm's eye. I looked up a bunch of YouTube tutorials and nothing helped. So I finally just kind of like winged it and went with what my estimate was, which was to close up the dart, not fully, but at least like a little bit, and rotate the center front seam of the bodice after the bust point. So basically it's curving in from here up to the neckline, which is kind of a thing that I normally feel like I have issues with, just because I have a really significant curve from bust to like my neck here. I always just have things that are gappy. So that's what I did, and I think it's working a lot better. I think that I probably need to rotate this in even just a little bit more, because I've pinched out more than a ½ inch here when I've closed it up. Don't mind this weird cutout. That is because I was cutting on like a scrap of fabric and didn't have a piece of fabric there and didn't feel like piecing it or anything for a mock-up because I don't need it. So anyway, this is the first version over here. You can still see with this dart out. The one thing that I'm concerned about, and the reason that I am going to recut this piece, is I am a little worried that once I recut this, it's going to make the bust potentially too tight. I might need to add just a little bit more room right at the apex of the bust, because I feel like right now it's just a little tight there. So I'm a little concerned about that. And I'm probably still going to cut this one the same as this one and then just make that change on the final. But otherwise, it's still feeling maybe a little bit long here. I did take out the excess length around the sides and the back, but yeah, it's still feeling a little bit long. So I think I'm going to take out another ½ inch just at the sides. The back is feeling good now. So better make those changes. So I'm slightly worried that I've overcompensated too much, because you can see kind of the wrinkles going on here. I think what I'm going to do to help with that is actually I'm going to keep the curve here, but I'm going to open it up a little bit here and make it a little bit wider at the bottom. I don't mind if this is more gathered at the bottom than it currently is, but I'm going to live dangerously, and I'm going to do that on the actual bodice. I am done mocking up. I just hate mock-ups. So, but this is the other side of this. Now they are even, and I will show you what my original pattern piece looked like versus what this looks like, so that you can see kind of the tweak. Again, this does need to be curved in a little bit more here, just like I thought, and the bust was a little too tight. So right now I've got it pinned at about 1/4 inch seam allowance, and honestly, I would like to even go just a skosh like further wider than that. So I'm going to add probably a ½ inch right to the bust point, and to make also the waist a little bit wider too, so that it's hopefully not such a curved seam in the front like it currently is. But again, I'm doing that on the actual because I hate mock-ups. So that said, I am done for tonight. I'm going to do all of the rest of this tomorrow, and I did mark where I'm going to take up the side seams too. I haven't done it yet, but tomorrow I'm going to cut out the actual fabric. So yay! I just wanted to show you the difference here so that I don't forget to do this tomorrow. So underneath we have the original pattern piece or original mock-up, and then we have the second mock-up on top. So it looks pretty similar when we're looking kind of at the bottom area. This part does dip down lower over here, and this part goes higher over here. What I've done is I've matched this corner of the arm's eye, but then you can see that this arm's eye really curves out. The other one is actually ending about here and then meets up about there and goes way farther up here. And then you can see the neckline difference, and this is where it curves, where I've cut off that curve, and that's because I don't know if that's like a sunken chest or whatever, but I do have a very distinct chest curve. And then down here, we've got where I'm going to curve it out even further. So this is going to be 0.25 inches further, 0.5 inches, 0.5, and then I think I'm going to curve it back here, but I'm probably going to cut it large to begin with, and then if I need to, I will curve it back more. So I'm probably going to just make this line kind of go like this and go out like there. So that's the changes. Again, the biggest difference is curving the arm's eye so distinctly here compared to the one underneath it. This is where I had to make that dart to make it fit. So it was just gaping a whole ton. And now because I've curved it in, I don't have that gape. So that is what I've done. Again, it's just kind of like pivoting this point backwards. And really otherwise it's pretty much the same. I mean, these line up once you get to about there. But yeah, that's the differences. Okay, I am going to cut out the actual bodice tomorrow, so good night. Hello all. I have been working on the Hussif dress. I have everything cut out for that, at least as far as the body and skirt pieces go, and pockets. I don't know if it'll work with pockets, but I want pockets. But that is not what I'm coming at you for right now. As you can maybe tell by these scissors that are not sewing scissors, they are cutting papery type scissors, I have something to cut open for you on camera, and that is I have mail. So exciting mail day. I got one package that I was expecting about now, and that one is from Fancy Styles Fabric. If you don't know about Fancy Styles Fabric, they do an Instagram live every week. Definitely go check them out. I'll leave a link to them below. But they do an Instagram live every week at 10 a.m. Pacific time, though the days change. And they show you like all of the special fabrics that are being discounted that week. But they also do a giveaway at the end of the live, and the winner wins 5 yards of any of the fabric that is shown on the live. So I won 2 weeks ago, which was really, really exciting. And they sent me a swatch of the fabric that I thought I wanted. And so I got that and then confirmed that was what I wanted. And now this should be the fabric. So I have that to open. And then I also have a package that I'm super surprised got here this early. I didn't expect this for like a month, because this is my strawberry dress fabric. So it came all the way from China, from the elite of the Station Road in Nanchang, China. And it got here super crazy fast. So that is the other thing that I have to open. So let's start with the Fancy Styles fabric. Being very careful, of course. It's so exciting. I mean, I knew exactly what it would look like because I've already seen the swatch. But look at this silk. So this is their icy lavender silk taffeta, and this might look familiar to you if you have been around my Instagram at all, because this is like the exact same fabric that I made the fairy godmother bustle out of. And the thing is, though, that I'd originally purchased that fabric for potentially a different dress. And then when I saw the fairy godmother bustle, the one that was in the Manchester Museum, I had to make that dress. And I was like, hey, I already have, I think I had 10 yards or something of that fabric. And so I'm going to use that for this instead of my original plan. So I am going to pop up on screen here my original plan dress, and I still have the other fabric that I bought for that, which is this lovely fabric with the pinstripe. And this is a, I can't quite tell if it's a shantung or a dupioni. I think we're bordering, but I think it's technically a shantung. And this is going to be paired with the icy lavender, like that, for that dress there. So I am very, very excited to do that. That is very far down my list. That will not be happening for probably until at least January. But I'm excited to finally do that dress this year. I've only ever made one natural form dress, and it was a natural form princess seam dress, and so it was very different than your standard natural form dress, and it was also an evening gown. So I am excited to make a day dress because I feel like that will kind of fill maybe kind of like a gap in my wardrobe. So yeah. All right, second piece of mail. Let's cut this sucker open. This one's packed really tightly, so I have to be careful. Ooh, I'm excited. Ooh, I love it. Oh my god, you guys, I know this is silly, but like, I'm excited to make this dress. Oh my gosh, this is like lightweight stuff. Ooh, look at that. So it's very drapey, very sparkly. I got the kind with the sequins because I didn't want glitter to go all over. I know that the original strawberry dress is glitter, but I don't like that. I think that's terrible. So yeah, I bought the sequin kind. It's a softer net than I expected, but I think that'll be good. And yeah, then I'll just have to get all the rest of the materials for this, but this isn't going to be made until after I finish my 2 Halloween costumes. So this will be coming soon-ish, but not like super soon. So anyway, I just wanted to share those cool new fabrics with you, and I am going to go back to working on the Hussif dress, and I will come back with you probably later this evening when I have assembled the bulk of the Hussif dress, and probably will maybe try to do a sleeve mock-up tonight too. We'll see. Anyway, I will see you soon. So it is now Thursday night. I never did come back to you after last night or at the end of last night, but I have a lot of progress that I got done yesterday on the Hussif dress. Ta-da! Don't mind my messy floor. So I will show that to you in a little bit closer detail because I did get quite a lot done. And I'm now at the point where I need to attach a waistband and then figure out the sleeves. So yeah, I got a good amount done on the body yesterday. All right, so this is where we are on the Hussif dress so far. So yesterday I got all of the bodice pieces sewn together, including the facings for the center front opening. And likewise, it's hiding under this waistband that I have pinned on here, but I did get the skirt all put together as well, and again I did facings on the front. So this is a different thing from the pattern. I think I mentioned already with the bodice that I was planning on doing facings, but the skirt, I don't think I mentioned that. And the skirt pattern basically calls for the center fronts to be cut a couple inches wider than they need to be and then folded back, but that would mean that you would wind up with tons of excess material down below the opening as well. And I already kind of don't love a center front seam, period, but the fact that there would then be all of that excess material down there seemed doubly bad. So what I did was I just cut a strip, I think 13.5 inches long and 2 inches wide on one side, 3 inches wide on the other side, because I forgot to cut this side wider, the under flap part. So there is a seam right here where my finger is, and then the facing sticks out and then folds back underneath and will be stitched down by hand, I think, like right about where the seam is. And then this side again is only a 2-inch facing, and that is just folded in on itself. So that is how the closure is going to work. I think I'm going to do a hook and eye closure because the Hussif calls for a bunch of fake buttons on the chest, but it's like 2 rows of fake buttons, 2 rows of fake buttons, and nothing right in the center. So this seam should be the exact center front. So it'll go right up the center, and that way I can just do like the same distance, you know, buttons over here, buttons over there, etc. And I think I'm gonna do a mix of buttons, but I haven't really decided that yet. So anyway, it is time for putting the waistband on, and then I have to work on sleeve mock-ups. I guess I should try it all on at some point too, shouldn't I? Maybe before I put the waistband on, I guess. So that's what I'll do next. I'll be trying it on. All right, so here it is. This midriff showing is actually my corset, but it's going to have a 1.5-inch waistband in there, so that is just fine. It looks, you know, super crazy dowdy, but that's kind of what it's supposed to look like. So I guess that's okay, but it fits fine. I mean, I don't know why it wouldn't. It's really very plain and simple. And again, sharing the mirror with Elsa. But yeah, so that is what it is so far. And now I guess I'm going to go ahead and put the waistband on and then sleeves. So let's get to work. So the waistband is on, but I'm having a rather hard time accepting the fact that this dowdy silhouette is what I am supposed to have. I mean, I know it is, like looking at the design, it's just dowdy. And I think I'm just having a hard time with this late teens dowdy silhouette. Most of my stuff doesn't fit like this, or you know, like that. And I know that I've got the wrong sort of bust support on here, like the bust should be lower, but I just don't think I can go that far to matching the period. So for now, this is going to be the dowdiest I can make it. The one good thing about it being so dowdy is that unlike the early teens, I have room for pockets. So I do have pockets in this dress, which is nice. Yeah, but it's sure dowdy, and I think it's not being helped by pinning the front shut. So I think I might actually go ahead and put on closures next before doing sleeves, because then it's going to be easier to put on every time. So and I'm kind of tired of being in the sewing room because this is one of the hottest rooms in the house and we're having one of the hottest days of the year. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go put closures on and then come back to this tomorrow for sleeves. But I mean, like, I'm pleased with it. It's just freaking dowdy. All right, everyone, it is Friday evening now, and I have excellent news regarding the Hussif dress. I have a sleeve! Or at least I have a working sleeve mock-up. And actually, this was very painless, so, you know, knock on wood that something doesn't happen to make it much more painful later. But the reason that it was so painless is the fact that this is actually my like fitted sleeve mock-up. Now, as you can tell from the back, it's not being exactly fitted right now, so this armscye, I guess, is a little bit smaller than whatever I've used it for before. That said, it's not enough that it's going to bother me, so actually I'm just going to keep that exactly as is and just leave this sleeve and cut it out of the fabric that I'm actually using. Now, what I have to figure out about this, well, for one thing, I am tempted to actually make it have a little bit more flare right at the bottom of the sleeve, just because this one does look pretty loose around her arm. And as you can tell, it's also a little bit shorter than this. All of the animals have just come into this room. I just feel like you should know that. So, Dora says hi. Here's some cat content for you. I'm not going to lift Lion up because he's big. Well, maybe I will. Okay, Lion, you want to be on the camera? You want to be on the camera? And there's Lion for you as well. So the animals say hi. Now back to Hussif dress progress. Now that I'm covered in dog fur. So yes, I think I'm going to add a little bit more around the bottom of the arm, just so it gets like a little bit more of that flare, that hang to it. And then I am going to shorten this a little bit. The funny thing is, I actually already have a pink line drawn in on this from whenever I've used it in the past. So that pink line looks like it's just about exactly where I want the bottom of this to be, maybe even a little bit longer than that actually. And then the other part of this is that the bottom of the sleeve is scalloped. So I'm going to use this shorter length, but then it's also going to scallop. So in fact, actually, I need to add a seam allowance for that. So maybe I should leave it exactly where it is, because then I will just get rid of that excess via seam allowance. So that'll be fine. But yes, it's going to scallop, which means that I'm going to have a facing band is what I think I'm going to do for it, and just turn up that band is in sew scallops, and then, you know, press it, trim, clip all the seams, etc., turn it up, and have that scalloped shape. And then what I think I'm going to do both on the sleeve ends and also on the apron is that it's got this sort of blanket stitching, the fake blanket stitching, both here and here. And so I think I'm gonna actually take like yarn, if I can, and do a blanket stitch with that yarn so that it looks like it's, you know, this is supposed to be basically be something that's like super enlarged from a tiny Hussif size. And I have my like Hussif inspiration here, and it has that blanket stitch going on. So I really like that contrasting. I've got some pink yarn, so I think I'm going to try doing that and see how it looks. I still haven't quite decided what is going on here on this sleeve, but there's something there that looks maybe like hooks and bars, or maybe it's an embroidery. So part of me is like, well, it could just be this cute ribbon embroidery from this Hussif. So it might be if it comes down to it, but for now I'm not going to worry about that. I'll do that once it's finished. So anyway, I'm just glad that I have a sleeve that is pretty much spot on. I'm just going to let it out that little bit and make that scallop shape. And I will be cutting out my sleeves next. Also, you might notice that there's no pins up the front here. I did put in almost all of my hooks and bars yesterday. I'm not loving how it's laying over the bust. It's being really ripply, and I think that's because it's the two curves coming together, and I'm not 100% positive what to do with that. So I'm gonna have to figure out how much it bothers me, I think, is gonna be the main thing. I still have to do, I think, 3 bars and 4 hooks left, but that's actually just at the very bottom. It's not really structural, so I decided I would do all of these last night while watching a rather creepy documentary on how much we're obsessed with social media on Netflix. So that was scary. But at least I got a lot of hooks and eyes done, and I did get all of my facings stitched down by hand on the inside as well. So it is sleeve time, and I will come back to you probably once I have sleeves on. I just wanted to pop in really quickly and explain how I'm doing the facing for these sleeves. So I've cut out my sleeve pattern, and I've also cut out a facing piece. Now, first I decided to figure out my scallops on my sleeve. So I was going through my ribbon spools to find something round that would be the right amount. I actually started with a smaller ribbon spool that would have given me 5 scallops across, and it was just too much and they were going too deep. And so what I've done here is from the original sleeve, which I cut out with a flat bottom, I went and I marked 3/4 of an inch up from the edge, and that was where I wanted my scallops to go to. Now, keep in mind, all of these are going to actually be a 1/2 inch shorter than all of that because of the seam allowance. So once I got my 3/4 of an inch, I marked a line or a few dots across the sleeve, and then I found this larger spool, and it just so happened that this was the perfect width to do 4 across. First, I made sure to mark off my 1/2 inch seam allowance on the edge of the sleeve because you don't want to like cut off your scallop by putting it into the seam allowance. So I started it a 1/2 inch in on both sides, and then I basically took my spool and looked at where my dots were going across for the 3/4 inch, and I just put my spool on the edge of the fabric and made sure that the spool was going to the dots. And then I drew in my line and moved over the spool, drew in my line, moved over the spool, etc. across. Then I went and I just cut off that excess past the edge of the line. And then I went ahead and I did a facing for this as well. So the facing, it's 2.5 inches tall from the tall points, from the points of the scallops. And that way, that will give me enough that it'll go up just a little bit and be able to fold over and be 2 inches tall past the top. Really, it'll be 1.5 inches tall after you take the seam allowance off, but that's why I wanted it to be 2.5 inches because seam allowance and everything. And I did the same thing here. I actually just put my sleeve down on my fabric and traced in all of my scallops and made it 2.5 inches tall and cut it out. So now I have the facing, and what I'm doing here is I am pinning it in place on my sleeve. So I have right sides together here. I'm going to sew this line here 1/2 inch away from the edge, and then I'm going to clip all my corners, trim my seam allowance, etc., and fold that, turn that in and press it in place, and that will give me a really nice smooth finished scalloped edge. Just make sure to clip not only your corners but your curves so that everything will be really smooth. So I did want to pop in here and explain that in case anyone was not sure how that worked or how that was going to work. I'm going to finish up the sides of the seam once that's all done, and that way I don't need to worry about that. And actually what I'm going to do is, because I like to serge all of my edges of my pieces, that's just how I finish all my seams, and so this part obviously you don't need to serge because A, it would be really a pain. Serging scallops is a pain, and B, it's going to be fully encased, so you just don't need to worry about it. You don't even need to worry about this top part because it is going to get folded down. So once I turn and flip this over, I am going to press this down on the inside. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to serge all of my edges of the rest of this and sew it together, assemble it like a regular sleeve. But I'm doing this part first because it's fiddly and it's easier to do that when it's flat. So I'm going to get to it. I will come back to you probably again once the sleeves are actually set onto the bodice. So one super quick change from what I just said actually is that you can't serge this after you've already folded it. You have to serge it down and you have to assemble it down so that it's going to be right sides together with these not folded up yet. And that is because otherwise at the very bottom of the hem where the sleeves come together, you are going to see seam allowance. So let me show you what this will look like. I'm going to go ahead and stitch this up, and that way you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so I did the seam up and then turned this back up. So now we've got a nice edge, and I probably didn't quite clip this curve quite enough, which is why it's making this a little pinchy, but you know what, it's under my arm. I don't care. So now that is what this looks like from the inside. Though some of it is coming unfolded. This will be all hand stitched down, catching just like a thread from the sleeve because I don't want it to show from the outside. And if I just catch a thread or so, it shouldn't show too much. But that is our sleeve. I just have to run my ease stitches, and then that can be set in right sides out, of course. And then the embellishment can be added. So better do the same thing to the other one now. It is way too late at night on Friday night, but I just wanted to pop in and show you the sleeves of my Hussif dress, which I'm super in love with. I think they are freaking adorable. The blanket stitch really worked out super well on the scallops. So yeah, I did that with yarn. I didn't measure the gaps or anything, I just kind of like eyeballed it, and I think it worked really fantastically. So I'm hoping that tomorrow I can do the collar, and then that's it for like non-embellishments. Everything else is embellishments. And that way, while I embroider the hem, which is going to be machine embroidery, but while I start working on that after I do the collar, I can either work on the apron at the same time, or I can maybe even sew the buttons on the front of the bodice, because they're all the fake decorative buttons, while the skirt is being embroidered on the machine. I'm not really sure, but anyway, I am excited to get the collar done tomorrow and get to move on to embellishments, because even just doing the little blanket stitch on here made me like this dress so much more. So I haven't tried it on yet since I put the sleeves on, but the mock-up worked really well. I'll try it on tomorrow at some point, but I am quite happy. So I'm going to go to bed and I will see you tomorrow. I have been working on the collar today, and I have to talk to you about how this is working. I'm not entirely happy with the look, but I do want to tell you the steps that I did to achieve this look, so far at least. But first, I thought you should see that I've got a sleeping friend right here. So there's some cat content for you. Some sweet Dora. And now back to the collar. Okay, so this collar is made up of 3 layers. What I did first was I had a sort of like color-ish piece that had been used with something else, and I put it on the bodice, and then I just sort of like darted and pinned and whatever it to get into the shape that I wanted here for the neckline. So once I did that, then I took it off and cut out my base piece, which is out of twill, and I cut that out based on what I did on there, and it fit fine, so that was good. So then I had to turn to trying to create the fichu look, because that is what's going on here. There is, see, it's sort of that like pleated, gathered fichu look, both front and back, but it's a built-in collar. Now again, I'm not entirely happy with the way that it looks, because I feel like right now it's looking much more crinkly than I want, as opposed to fichu-y. So I'm really hoping that once I put it on the bodice, it will be better. But basically what I did was I have my piece that was cut to the actual size, the twill, and then I cut a piece of fusible interfacing also to the same exact shape as the twill. And then I cut a bias strip of muslin, which is this top layer, and it was 10 inches wide, which is about twice the width of the back section, the widest section. And then I just sort of like pulled it to wind up getting sort of pleat type things going on. And I did this actually before I put it on the fusible. First I did it just to check that I could do it. So I did it to the shape of the twill and pressed it. Then I took it off of the twill, cut out the interfacing, and then put it back on the interfacing with the fusible side sticking up from the interfacing. And then I pressed the muslin with all the pleaty bits down onto the interfacing. So most of this is actually being quite held in place pretty nicely because it's fused to the interfacing, which is really handy. Obviously these edges are not, but that's okay because that's going to be bound. So once I had that, then I sandwiched right sides together of the twill and the cotton interfacing layer, and I took some cotton eyelet trim that I had and put that in there too. So basically what that means, I'm gonna get you in here, is that we have the interfacing layer, the eyelet trim layer, and then the twill layer, and those all get sandwiched together and stitched in place. I think I am going to have to trim the seam allowance, which I was hoping to not have to do just because the eyelet trim is actually bound, and so it's just gonna get messier. So I'm gonna press it and see if I can do without, but basically then I turned it right side out, and now again I'm gonna press it, see if I will have to trim that whole curve, which normally is what I would do, with the exception of that eyelet trim being bound. And then once I press it, I'm going to fix my corners here, which I have not done yet because I am not 100% positive on the length. When I cut the twill, it actually wound up being just a hair short, so then I cut the cotton and interfacing a little bit longer, so I'm hoping that'll make up for it. But anyway, the inside is going to be basted together and then basted to the neckline of the dress, and then I'm going to bind it with bias tape and turn that in and stitch the bias tape down by hand. So that is my process on this collar. It has been like an entire afternoon of me figuring it out because my brain's not functioning today, so that's always handy. And I'm going to keep working on this collar now and come back to you probably once it is on the dress. So Dora says bye. So the collar is on, which means that this dress is actually done for now, at least structurally. Obviously it needs a lot of embellishments, so that is what I'm going to be working on next, because hate to say it, but it's Saturday night, which means this vlog is actually over. So all of the embellishments for this dress will go into the next vlog, though I am also going to be making a skirt next week too. That should be a super quick project, but it won't be entirely the Hussif dress in my next vlog. But I am going to be needing to make the apron with its ruler embellishment and the ability to somehow hold the 4 large needles I haven't quite figured that out yet, and I have to make those needles, but that should be interesting, as well as the large needle for her to hold. I'm going to be making the pincushion hat, and the dress is going to be embroidered slash appliqued down around the hem with really large scissors, thimble, and thread. And then the top of the bodice, I still haven't quite decided. I've put a poll over on my Instagram, but the top of the bodice is either going to have buttons applied to it with some lace, or it is going to actually have the bib of the apron come up and have the buttons applied to that. So I'm leaning towards that because that's definitely what's winning on my Instagram poll. So we shall see. I still have to decide for sure. But I'm very happy with where it stands right now. I was really hoping to get the structure of this done for this week, so yay on that. And I will see you next week with all of those embellishments. So if you did like this vlog, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a video. I do post videos on YouTube twice a week, with my sewing vlogs on Tuesday and regular content on Friday. Speaking of which, this Friday, it's finally Elsa! So come back on Friday for that. But I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to support me in all of my sewing and all the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Ko-fi account down below. Once again, I do hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I will see you very soon with another video. Happy sewing! Have a wonderful week, and we will see you all very soon with an... We?